Okay, it looks like we are recording. This is the Audit Committee meeting. Today is February 14th, 2022. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Tonight we have with us Tanya Moffett from Marina and Company, the partner on the engagement. Abby Farber, who is our new citizen member of the Audit Committee. Josh Cam, who's our finance manager. Bill Raylia, who's one of our city councilors, and Roy Bielostowski, who is also one of our city councilors, our council president. I'm Lauren Breithaupt. I'm the finance director here, and I'll just get us rolling, and then I'll turn it over to Tanya. In the past, we used to Josh and I used to step out of the room and have you guys ask questions. With public meetings laws, we're no longer allowed to. We have to put the minutes, we have to put the audit committee meetings on the website. So it will be going on the website. So there was really no point of us stepping out anymore. So we ask that if you do have any questions or concerns, that you please at any time reach out to Tanya or one of her team. She'll give you her contact information later in this meeting. If you have anything, please don't hesitate to ask. I know she's an open book, and she's really great at getting back to you if you need something. We had another great successful audit. Happy to report that we didn't have any issues or findings. So clean audit all the way around. We received ARPA funding in fiscal year 2022. So none of that was included in this audit. We didn't really know how to, there was still a lot up in the air about accounting for it as a receivable or anything like that. So it was decided across the board that we were just going to account for it in this current year. We hadn't spent any of the money yet. So we're just going to account for it in this current fiscal year, which means that we will have a single audit this year, which is an audit of federal awards, and probably likely the next few years going forward. So that will be an additional separate audit of compliance over the federal award spending. We've been working with Tanya throughout the last few years on all the CARES Act and all the federal funding, and she's been a great help to us, so I don't foresee any issues with that. We're still working with the council on trying to determine how we're going to spend that money. Other than that, we had no over budget expenditures over budget. It was really pretty clean, which is really nice. It's always a challenge when you're going from working in the office 24/7, or well, I guess 40 hours a week, to everyone working at home and trying to maintain those controls and those procedures. So I think I'm really proud of our team and all the work that they did to make sure that we maintain those internal controls and those separation of duties. And we are still working really hard, even though that it's been additionally crazy this year with people being out with COVID or other illnesses and guidelines that you have to stay home or quarantine. And so it has been a challenge, but we are doing our best to make sure that there's always 2 sign-offs and that we're really doing our checks and balances. With that, I will turn it over to Tanya, and I'll let her give a little analysis of everything. And then if you have any questions, feel free to ask at the end there.
Yeah, and you can always stop me in the middle as well. If there's something that I say that resonates with you or you have additional questions, it's sometimes easier to do that versus waiting till the very end. So, like Lauren said, we had a clean or an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of a financial statement opinion that we can give for the June 30, 2021 audited financial statements. The other thing to note is that the city's financial statements is an annual comprehensive financial report. In prior years, it was called a comprehensive annual financial report, but this is an awards program that the city is a part of. So there are standards that the Government Accounting Standards Board creates. And so that's like this level, right? So like you have to do this to be able to do it. Well, there's this extra that the city does, and they go above and beyond, and they do this annual comprehensive financial report. And so if you look in the audited financial statements, It's page 16 of the PDF document, but it's page 6 of the actual like page numbers if you have it. But it's the Certificate of Excellence for Financial um, a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. The city received that for the June 30, 2020 fiscal year, and we believe the city will receive that for the June 30, 2021 year. I just like to point that out because that's a lot of time and effort that the finance team, as well as other departments, gather some of the information, but it's a lot of time and effort that the city does. So for example, there's the letter of transmittal, which is an additional piece that's a part of the certificate program. And then actually the best part that I love the most is the statistical section, which is at the back, which has 10 years worth of historical information. And so that is something that's not required by the Government Accounting Standards Board. That is something that's above and beyond that's required for the certificate program. So I just like to point that out, that the finance team is going above and beyond what they have to do for the audited financial statements.
Could I ask just a quick question? Who's the body that actually gives the certification and the award out?
It's the Government Finance Officers Association. So it's the GFOA, it's the national organization. And so the city submits it to them, and then they have 3 independent reviewers review it, as well as somebody on their team at the GFOA. And so it goes through a very thorough review process. And so a lot of our clients actually didn't get back their certificate in time for their audited financial statements. So the city of West Linn is actually lucky because they actually knew they had their June 30, 2020 certificate, because there were a lot of our clients that couldn't put that in their financial statements this year because the GFOA is a little bit behind, and it's taking them about 9 months when normally it takes them under 6 months to get the reviews done.
I
So
think we got ours on like December 20th or something when we have to issue by the 31st. So it was like a very close call when usually we get it, sometime in October or even earlier. But yeah, and I'm also a reviewer on the
Oh,
committee. So I do the reviews I do some reviews each year for other municipalities.
good. Very good. Congratulations to, the team and beyond that for making that extra step. I love the statistical section.
it's
Thank
not
Very,
audited, but we look at it to make sure that it's consistent with the other financial statements.
of course. It's highly illustrative. That and the comparisons to other municipalities that you all put out, very useful, especially for people who complain about how high taxes are.
Yeah, well, the other piece that's a little bit interesting is sometimes you'll see like NAs are not applicable or zeros. That might be because there's a accounting rule change. So sometimes if something's like, well, shouldn't we have this back then? It's usually because there was some sort of accounting standard rule changes. So for June 30, 2020 and 2021, there were not really any significant changes. But for the last few years, we've had some significant ones. 7 years ago, we had GASB 68, which is the pension plan one. So, like the net pension liability, the pension deferred outflows and inflows. So, you wouldn't see those prior to that. And then 4 years ago, we had the other post employment healthcare benefits, which is another one that has a liability and an asset on the books this year. But that also is a new standard. And so you wouldn't see those numbers prior to that when you're looking at that historical information. So sometimes if it's zero or it's NA, it's because it's actually a new thing that we're now reporting. So I just kind of like to point that out because sometimes it looks like a funny picture when you see things that change drastically, and it may be because of an accounting standard change. So the rule setters, we don't get an option to, I mean, we put our 2 cents in when they have standards out for public comment, but they don't always listen to the smaller entities or the smaller auditors. But at least we put our opinions out there. Um, so we audit the basic financial statement and the supplementary information, the required supplementary information, the budget to actual pieces. In the required supplementary section, which is after the notes, there is some pension and other post-employment healthcare benefit stuff that we don't audit. We compare it to make sure that it makes sense. And the same thing with the management discussion and analysis. We don't audit those, but we look at it to make sure it makes sense and is consistent with it. We don't audit the introductory section. And there's some other like the statistical section. But I do like to point that out because the reason that required supplementary information with the pension and the Opeb are not audited is because that will eventually be a 10-year schedule that has that information in there. And then there's going to be, at some point, there will be different auditors in there. So that's why we don't audit those schedules specifically. We look at the current year information and we make sure that it's consistent, but we just say that we don't audit that piece. But my favorite part of the audited financial statements is actually the management discussion and analysis. And the reason that I like the management discussion and analysis is because it has 2 years worth of information and it's comparative and it explains those higher, it's like a snapshot, high level. So it's like government-wide information, very high level. And so you can see when things have changed. And then it explains in the narrative why there's those changes. It also has some information on long-term debt, on capital assets, kind of what's going on the economy within the city. And so I really like the management discussion analysis, even though it isn't audited, it's like one of my favorite things in the financial statements. I can go through specific statements and explain to you guys, like do a high level explanation of what they are, or you can just ask questions. I can talk a little bit about how we do the audit. It's really up to you what information you guys want.
Would be, I jotted down some things. I mean, I assumed that your audit procedures are much like any other audit procedures. Mine were more about, what concerns do you have? Are there things that aren't on there perhaps, or, just general recommendations for strengthening internal controls? I know under FASB audits, there's this report that's written to management that generally isn't shared with outsiders. Or things like, these are not material findings. These are little things you might want to consider. And within that, I look and see, are there, things that you've run across? You obviously work with other municipalities. Are there opportunities for greater automation, more staffing, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we look at that information and then we definitely have that layer. So we have like the reportable findings, which are significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, which we have no findings for the city. And then we also have any like little recommendations. I don't believe that we had any this year. I'd have to go back and get back to you on that. Lauren's shaking her head. I don't think we did either. So if we see best practices or if we find something that is off, like that doesn't rise to that level, like if we were to find a check that wasn't signed or something that somehow got processed through the bank, we would let the finance team know that. It's so small that it doesn't rise to a level, but there was none of those that I'm aware of for the city of West Linn this year. I mean, there's always opportunity to strengthen internal controls, but there's always a cost associated with it too. More bodies, more software, training on software and things like that. City of West Linn has actually done a very good job of having very strong internal controls within the entity, especially since what happened several years ago. So, actually places where they've had some sort of instance of impropriety is usually the strongest because everybody locks everything down really well. And so I can tell you that I don't have any current concerns with the city. So yeah. And I see that Counselor Rail, I can't ever say your last name. I'm so sorry.
That's all right, Tanya. You can just call me Bill.
It's Relier?
Yeah, the last name is just broken right in the middle. It's Relier.
Relier. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so my question is going to relate back to those areas that you say you don't audit. So as a previous director at a school district, we do a lot of actuarial studies, and not necessarily to take a look just at the risk associated with mortality and liability associated with insurance, but to take a look overall at the health of the financial picture going forward and how that compares to PERS and other assets that the organization owns to give us a greater understanding of, how we qualify for bond rates and this relationship between our financial situation and those potential risks which we may be facing in the future, that might impact our ability to go after additional dollars and finance things. So I'm just wondering if, from the committee's perspective, if others feel that there's some interest in wanting to tie in some type of actuarial studies to our other financial studies.
So there is some actuary studies that are done. So there's actuary studies done on the pension as well as the other post-employment healthcare benefits. So yes, Bo.
Yeah, and then there were a few areas you said you didn't audit, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about those. And then you mentioned a rationale for not auditing those, but I'm not quite sure that I
It's
fully
just
understood that.
it's just those statements, those specific statements, because they have 10 years worth of information. We audit the current year information and we've audited the past information. It's just that we don't state in our auditors' reports that we are auditing those because at some point there will be different auditors during that 10-year period. So we audit the current information. So all of the pension information and the Opeb information, we look at that and we do audit that information. It's just that statement. So I can tell you what page numbers it's on it, and just so you can see.
I think what Tanya's referring to is that in those schedules, there's going to eventually be 10 years of data. And so they don't say in their auditor's report that they're auditing those schedules. They are looking at the current year of those schedules and making sure those are correct. But if they change over auditors, they don't want to be responsible for what was in the past for the past 9 years. And so that's why part of the standards for auditing is that they don't say that they audit those, if that makes sense.
On those particular standards. So,
yes.
Or statements.
So,
Yes.
so does it make sense to have that kind of a statement, or is there, maybe I missed it, maybe there's already a statement to that effect in the report?
There is a statement in the report, and I can point out exactly the verbiage on that here in just one second, where it talks about it. But we do audit that information, the current year information. It's the potential for when you switch auditors that all that information isn't audited by the other auditor. Then you'd have to have some legalese type of terminology in your report saying that somebody else audited those past years and all that stuff. So our standards just tell us not to issue an opinion on that particular piece. Like it's not in relation to the basic financial statements. So that starts on page 76 is the page number. It's 86 of the PDF. So the first one is the schedule of changes in the city's total Opeb liability and related ratios, implicit rate subsidy plan. So it's those specific schedules, and it goes through page 80, or on the PDF page 90. But those numbers, I can show you where those numbers are at in the audited financial statements for the current year as well, where we've actually audited them in the notes as well as on the face of the financial statements.
Awesome. Well, I'll pay more attention to those pages that you just mentioned. And then if I have any follow-up questions, I'll get with Lauren and go from there.
Yeah. Do you want me to show you in the auditors, or explain in the auditor's reports where it says that it's not audited with the in relationship opinion?
I don't think it's required in this meeting. I'll review that a little bit further. And I know that as a council member right now, we're getting ready to go into our pre-meeting work session for tonight's meeting, which starts at 5 o'clock. So if all of a sudden we jump off, it's for that reason.
Good. Do we have to take it before, I know Bill and Rory, and it's a big deal meeting coming up, Lauren, do we need to vote to accept the audit or to vote to give a recommendation that the city council accept the audit? So there's no, if our two counselors have to jump off, it's not going to impede anything.
No, there's no vote or anything like that. It's more just, this is
Okay.
more of informational. And then tonight at the council meeting, Tanya will come and give a brief version of what we just talked about
Right.
tonight. And so I think
Right.
that unless you three have any other questions, you do, Abby, and Rory, I see, has one.
Not a lot, I promise.
Okay,
Let's let
no
Rory
worries.
go first, and if Bill has any additional ones too, because I know they've got to jump off to the executive committee.
Hey, everybody. I just wanted to say I have no questions. I read the audit and I'm proud of the job our finance team has done. I'm also just a little bit under the weather. I test negative for COVID, but I had sick all weekend. I'm still sick today, so I'm just
Sorry.
a little bit out of it. So I'm not gonna ask any questions or anything. I just wanted to say that's why I've been a little quiet. I'm kind of saving my energy.
Well, we all hope you feel better soon. That's
Yes.
so fun.
Thank you.
Yes.
I was negative for COVID twice, but I still have the same
Thank
symptoms. So
goodness. Oh
hopefully we're
gosh,
okay. But
that's
thank
toughy.
everybody.
I've
That's
heard
a
a lot of
toughie.
people testing negative when they actually have it and then test positive. So
Yeah, especially since the PCR, I think it's the PCR tests aren't that as effective as some of the
Yeah.
others.
The at-home ones, yes.
Yeah.
If you go, GS Labs has great testing, so.
Yep. So, I'm going to assume, since you said everything was clean, that, despite the pandemic, the team has been able to keep up with, timely, whether it's monthly closings, bank recs, all that kind of thing that I used to always be so late about in my jobs. And the internal controls are good. I'm just going to get back a little bit to automation because I know there's been so many great updates in the past 5 to 10 years about automation. And Rory, I see your hand back up and I want to cede over to you because I know
It
you
was an
guys have to.
accident. Sorry, I left it up on accident. My bad.
Okay, no worries.
Continue.
And just that I mean, this is less an audit opinion than, seeing what other cities are doing. Are we up there in terms of automating things like processing AP, instead of having to run around with pieces of paper that, things can go electronically for approvals. And, I see that from the small to medium-sized nonprofit perspective of, everybody's jumping on the bandwagon now, especially because of the pandemic. And, are we up there with that, what you've seen at other cities as well?
Can I field that really quickly, Tanya?
yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Oh, please do.
It's great that you asked that. We've actually, I've been talking internally with the department heads a lot about how that's my next step is automating AP. We do still have kind of a old school, routing around the office with invoices. It's been better with the pandemic. We've done a lot more email and a lot more approval via email. But I'd still like to see, right now our process, our document management system doesn't really allow for approvals through the system.
Oh, goodness.
In our financial software also doesn't really have an option for that, which we are moving to the cloud version of our financial software in the next few months. And they said that there's other opportunities. And so I have already talked to our encoder, Tyler Technologies, our financial software, and they said that there's more automation during that. We've also been talking as a department head about our document management system and if there's a possibility that we could get something that has this kind of routing. So it is in the works. I actually also just talked to one of Tanya Moffat's partners, Rob Moody, on the consulting side of things, about, if we need help with that project, what that would look like. So that is in the works, something that I'm definitely going to be trying to do in the next year to 2 years,
Great.
if not sooner, but I think it would be a huge win for everyone. Also internally, we're talking about cash receipts, making those more automated too. We print a lot of stuff which doesn't need to be printed, in my opinion. It's hard because we like to have that paper copy for the auditors. And so until we get something that's really a solid document management and a solid packet where we can show, hey, this is all of our packet, here's all of our receipts all batched together, and it makes sense to not have to stand there and scan 500 things. Bye, Bill, and bye, Rory.
Bill.
Thank you guys
Bye,
for
Rory.
both joining me. I'll be on in a few minutes. Until we get
Oh
that.
God, you have to do that too, Lauren.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
eventually.
Yep.
I don't have to be there right away, but I will be there in a few minutes.
Good.
And
Good. I cannot speak, again, I'm not speaking from the level of city government, but that's what I've been doing with nonprofits for the last 10 years, is getting them away from paper into truly paperless and something where the auditors can just log in, they can do their selections. I say here, log in, and there's the purchase order, the shipping, the everything, the receipt, the shipping receipt, all the approvals, it's all attached to one transaction. You can see it. It's all password protected. It lives up in the cloud, so your IT people love it. There's redundancy. Again, we're talking about things that are tailored for nonprofits, but it works. And, it takes a little while for you to get your hands off of that paper. It's tough, but once you do it, you're never going back again.
Yeah, I would ideally love to do that. It's really something that I have talked to our city manager a couple times about in the last few months, like probably 10 times in the last 6 months.
Yep.
And he's on board with it. It's a matter of getting the right software, getting the right tools in order to make sure that we can do it, and it can be clean, and it can still maintain all of our internal controls and all of our documentation standards. But that definitely is in the works. When I came on at West Linn, there was a lot of things that were just done by paper, done manually calculated. We implemented a lot of different things, mostly just a lot of cash receipts, like our uploads instead from the banks, instead of having to go through and manually key hundreds of transactions every day.
Oh,
and then have duplicate.
It's horrible.
I mean, when I started, they were, we had two ladies who were literally keying all
Did they have one of those adding machines that you pull the handle on?
Not quite that bad, but it was bad. Like, we would get printouts from all these different banks and stuff of all the different cash receipts for utilities, and they would have to just go through with a ruler and key them, and there would be, of course, there's user error when that happens, because there's duplicate postings or right.
Yeah.
And so we implemented a lot of uploads, and when we transferred over our financial software in 2015, that really improved a lot of our processes, but I think that there's still a ton of room for improvement. And it's really just things tend to move a little bit slowly, and especially when you're in a pandemic, and especially when it's just a little crazy. We don't have a lot of extra staff to do these things.
The major thing I would not, it's not caution, but to make sure, and I tell this to my clients as well, nonprofits, I don't work with government, is that bring on a consultant to help you with, because you're going to need, it's a big lift to, get your data normalized and transferred over, and your staff doesn't need to know how to do that. And, there needs to be a point person on the project, and it can't be either of you two, or, because it's a huge lift for a short period of time. So if, you can bring on a consultant, in fact, someone outside of who's even selling the software, perhaps, the reseller or the seller, that is the key to a successful implementation, is just do that. And then, you'll never have to use paper again, and it will free your staff to, not that, nobody should be doing data entry anymore. Everybody should be doing things that use their higher strategic powers, which, as far as I know, machines still can't, no matter how good the algorithm, machines still can't quite do for us anymore. So
Right. Yeah.
you've
And
got my support on that.
it's also just, things get lost in translation, and it just doesn't make any sense to me that we are, doing interoffice mail and walking things around a building to be signed off on it, when literally it should just be like, here it is in a software, and you know exactly what you have to sign off on during the day, and you know exactly what like is done and whose hands it's in. Whereas like
Yep.
it will be like 2 weeks later, and we'll be like, what happened? Not that this happens very often, but sometimes it
No,
does. We'll be
but
like, well, what happened to that invoice? Like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
put it in this
yeah,
person's doc. Oh, I put it in
yeah,
this, so just making sure that those invoices are getting routed to the right people
yeah.
and are getting done efficiently, and so
Oh,
it will be a good thing.
gigantic. It's
Oh,
it is
huge.
like, night and day, and it frees up a lot of your staff time. Well, if you have to go to a bond issuance to get it, I will vote in support of it.
Thank you. I
Because I
appreciate
know
that. I really
these
appreciate
things
that.
ain't cheap. I know 20,000 for a small nonprofit. So anyway, the only other question I had for Tanya was, is there anything coming down the pike in terms of new proclamations from Gatsby that, we should be ready for, or any murmuring? Because I know with FASB, you usually hear, things start percolating until they eventually get released. But any new pronouncements that we should have our heads up for?
I mean, I think that because you guys already implemented leases, correct?
We implemented
Yeah.
that last year, so.
Yeah. So there's a big one coming up that's leases, but the city has already early implemented that, and there really
Good.
isn't. I mean, they're working on like a financial reporting model change and some of that stuff, but they're not to the point where it's even released yet. So most of the ones that are coming up are not ones that the city, like, that it's going to be a big lift. Like, it's just like clarifying something or maybe changing a note disclosure a little bit, but nothing that's like a big, like,
Yeah.
the lease one took some time, right, Josh?
Poor Josh.
Oh, man.
That took a while.
Yeah, it hit not-for-profits too. FASB had the same thing with the change on the leases.
Yeah.
But
It's a brutal
thank you.
one.
I remember auditors, telling us that before, and I thought I should ask that question. But great. I mean, I think it's the most readable, audit, and the reports that the finance folks send out. Like I said, I love the statistical analysis. Well, I learned a lot also being on the budget committee as well, how the different funds work and how there isn't necessarily fungibility between the different sources, which some people don't get. So, especially ones related to property. But this was very informative. Thank you. And it's good to hear an outside opinion that we're in good shape, especially after what I read about that after I'd moved out here and I was looking at our website and I saw that we'll just call it the bad thing of many years ago. It's like, holy moly.
The dark years. We
So
call them the dark years.
the dark
Those that shall
years.
not be named.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
Well, I was living, I don't know if you all saw it, but I was living on the East Coast, right next to Long Island, before the biggest school the Roslyn District School scandal, which they made a movie of the month on HBO about, where the superintendent was in collusion with the audit firm, and they were just, pulling all this money out to, use for their own purposes. That
Goodness.
that was interesting because I was in the education sector then, and they passed a law that every school district had to be audited by the state controller's office after that one.
Oh my
So
goodness.
If
yeah,
you want to watch a movie, if you haven't seen All the Queen's Horses, that's the largest municipal fraud in the United States to date.
what's it called again?
All the Queen's Horses.
Ooh,
I'll have to check that out too. I've never.
Oh,
yeah.
when I teach the government accounting class at Portland State, I make the students watch it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you know Bill Ramirez? Because he teaches also at PSU. He's on the faculty there, I think, in the accounting, doing something with accounting, perhaps.
That name does not sound familiar to me, but I'm just an adjunct professor who teaches
Ah,
every once in a while. So when they
okay.
need help with the government class. So
Interesting. Interesting. My other favorite one is the one about the, it's not audit so much, but it's the one that's about the insurance companies and how they failed to cover things and all these, Meryl Streep was in it. That came out a few years ago too. It's, it's movies for, movies for accounting geeks like me is what I like to say.
well, it's very nice to meet you, Abby. If you have additional questions, if you send me an email,
I will.
our my email address is T Moffat, MOF as in Frank, F as in Frank, I, T as in Tom, T as in Tom, at, and then it's Marina, MERINA.com.
Fabulous. I will send you that email for recommendations for nonprofit auditors because we've got to get on top of doing this RFP. So,
Well, good luck with that. Thank you again, Abby, for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank
I'm glad
you.
that you're on this committee. I'm going to miss you on the budget committee, but I'm glad I still have you in one area. And thanks again to Tanya and of course to Josh and the rest of my team. I mean, I really couldn't have done it without them. And I really appreciate all their hard work this year. And,
well, congratulations.
So thank you guys all.
Congratulations. I know how hard an audit can be. So congratulations and really good work. You too, Josh. I think we've only met once or twice, but congratulations.
Thank you, Abby.
Yeah, they do an amazing job. So
that's
thank you, Tanya.
Great. Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. And we'll see you later, Tanya.
I'll see you in a little while. Yep.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.